Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar topic, how you win more with the right sales process. It's a topic we've been talking about a lot here at Leadfeeder. Hi, I'm Peter, and we've had several conversations around this with Jacob as well, our partner out of the Netherlands. But fortunately he and I can speak in Danish together, so it helped as well. But we'll be nice to you and do this in English. I think it will catch a few more people. But just short for housekeeping, we will be recording this, so you'll get the video as well afterwards. Hello everyone, so wonderful to see everyone saying hello. And of course, actually, we were in the middle of doing this just as we're getting started, making sure you also get the slides afterwards. So you'll be there. But I'm going to leave here to Jacob to do the small introductions and what it is we're going to do and talk about. So all yours, Jacob.
All right, excellent. Thanks a lot, Peter. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Looking forward to having a good chat about sales process, how to fit it up against your customer journey experience, your buyers that want to get through your funnel somehow. We'll talk about how to get that done with Leadfeeder specifically, but also more broadly how to think about your sales process and how tools fit in your sales process. How you make sure that you invest in sales tools and implement them into your business, and so to get the most out of them, getting the most out of them in terms of sales productivity and ROI. So first, obviously, Peter, do you want to do your own introduction?
I'll do a quick introduction and then I'll leave it to you.
All right, cool.
So I'm heading up here the customer success efforts in Leadfeeder with a nice small team residing in Helsinki, but with work been working in both in the Netherlands and in Denmark as well, working lots of SaaS companies. And one thing we always come across in customer success is that we need to do a lot of sort of consulting, advising, and making sure that we actually get a feel for how do you implement it in the best possible way. So this is really a lot what we're talking about here at Leadfeeder, and I'm so happy that I have Jacob on board to zoom a little bit out and dive even deeper into those kind of things. So here we go, all yours.
We'll try to see how that's gonna work. So I'm Jacob. My background is all sales. I've been doing sales for longer than I care to remember, and as soon as I start to thinking about it, makes me feel really old. But I've been doing individual sales roles, so individual contributor sales rep in various companies, and based all over Europe, but also selling to clients all over the world. I founded YourSales about 6 years ago. We help companies grow through improved sales, and offer sales consulting, lead generation, appointment setting, and deal closing. And so that's how Peter and I got to talk about sales process and where Leadfeeder fits in. Obviously, YourSales, we are avid users of Leadfeeder. So I've been doing a lot of thinking and about a lot of back and forth about how we can better use Leadfeeder to support the sales process and get more of the right kinds of buyers through their buying journey. So some of the things that we're going to go through here, we're going to talk a little bit about how we utilize technology to optimize your sales process. We'll also talk a little bit about what your sales process should support and why you have it in place. We'll talk a little bit about using data, and also without getting too overwhelmed, digging a little bit into what Leadfeeder is there to do. We'll talk a lot about customer buying journey, and how to use automation, in particular automation to share the content of everything that you get through, for instance, Leadfeeder, throughout your sales tech stack, your CRM, your outreach tools, etc. And we'll talk a lot. We'll talk about workflow and how to design a workflow that becomes your checklist for how you want to approach your customers and help them through their buying journey. So we're going to jump into that right now. what you should feel free to do is, of course, to ask questions, especially in the chat during the presentation here. I hope that Peter is going. It looks like he lost his internet connection. I'm hoping that he'll be back soon. But feel free to ask questions. We'll make sure to take them during and after the presentation as well, as appropriate. So I wanted to quickly cover one thing real quick in case some of you may have a different perception of what sales is all about. Some of you may not be from sales at all. So to me, sales is a profession which is all about helping people make better decisions for themselves. Why is that important? That's important because if you welcome back, Peter. That's important because sales get a bad rep, right? I mean, so sales professionals in general are seen as a bunch of con artists that are close to being a bunch of vultures just out there to grab people's money and then run as fast as they can away from them. But in the current economy, where a lot of what we're doing is really about getting recurring revenue or repeat business, that those days are gone. A sales professional who is the vulture style sales professional is now a thing of the past, at least in our world, because we cannot get recurring business or repeat business if we act like that. And so that's why it becomes really important to be acting with integrity and authenticity and help customers get the problems that they have solved. And that's what we need to do to keep in mind as well when we build our sales process, that the sales process is there to ensure that we become better at helping more customers do and make better decisions for themselves, and through that become super successful at sales. So here's some of the reasons that investments in sales technology fail. So I've seen a bunch of times, and some of the things that we do at YourSales is we set up sales operations, and that doesn't always work. The times where it doesn't work is often where the sales foundation isn't in place, where the sales processes aren't there, and so where there's no blueprint on how you do what you're supposed to be doing. So when you come into a company as a brand new sales rep, one of the best things that you can get is a description which is clear and brief on how to do your job. And because if you don't have it, then you need to figure it all out yourself. And that's something that most people can better do without initially, because there's enough stuff going on. So when you arrive at a company, having a defined sales process is super handy. One of the reasons that sales tech fails is that if you don't have a sales process that you can implement your existing that your newly acquired sales technology into, then it just gets to stand there or be left to its own devices, sitting over in a corner, being technology that you're not really using. You have it, or maybe marketing has it, or operations has it, but without properly thinking through how sales technology can be implemented throughout the organization, there's a good risk that the sales productivity increase that one is looking for will not happen. And so that's part of the reason that we have this call. And obviously, as I mentioned, if you don't have a sales process, this is what sales reps use to lean on when they are in doubt about what to do next. This is what they plan their day after, or what you plan their day with. And so without it, you will soar confusion, and confusion leads to lower sales productivities, because sales professionals feel like they need to do anything to get their sales going. So so it's incredibly important to have the sales process in place. Now, if you don't, the impact of investments in sales are likely to not yield what you were expecting. This is a pretty busy slide. You're going to get these slides as well. I think what's really important here is to talk a little bit about what the customer experience journey is all about. The customer experience journey is about the experience that the customer has throughout their buying journey. And as you can see on the slide, it goes from awareness all the way down to renewals and repeat business. Real briefly, awareness is the experience that the customer has, or the lack of awareness is what they have when they don't know that they have a problem, or they don't know that there are solutions out there. Education is where they educate themselves on ways to solve their problem. Selection is the selection of someone who can actually take care of the issue at hand. Then comes the time of commitment, customer success, handoff over to onboarding, utilization of the solution, expansion into the organization, and if it really works, then we'll also get renewals, we'll get expansion within the company, and we'll get referrals as well. And this here is the journey and the experiences that our sales process needs to support. Without this, you're better off. You're better off sitting down and making this. You need to think about how you bring your customers awareness and how you bring them through the entire sales process, how they want to be brought through the sales process. What's the experience that your customers and your potential buyers, what is it that they're looking for when they're out looking for solutions to problems? What is the way to be engaging with the client, in particular for your specific industry in that specific segment? Because this can be completely, as you can probably imagine, this can be completely different for instance, random industries like computer software will have a completely different approach than pharmaceuticals. Enterprise organizations will have a completely different approach than small and medium-sized businesses. There'll be high touch and low touch, and face-to-face and non-face-to-face, automation, no automation. So these are things that you all need to think carefully about. So I'm trying to map this here into a couple of process plans. So if you think about a sales funnel, the traditional sales funnel actually looks like a funnel. It goes like this and ends, and it narrows down until the closing of the business, of the initial deal. But that sales funnel is from ages ago, when we weren't necessarily planning on a funnel also including repeat business. We would be doing, this is the sales funnel, and a sales funnel, and then we'll put people back up in the top and try to narrow them into an additional sale. Now, in the software as a service or repeat business world, we do an hourglass. Model in order to signify that we have a broad set of prospects. We narrow down until we know which ones are committed. Then we commit, and then we expand from the commitment. And so this here pre-sales process plan contains everything that happens until the commitment. And the next slide, which I'll show in a minute, contains everything that happens in post-sales, from commitment onwards through onboarding, utilization, and expansion. So here, what you want to make sure to map is, for your specific industry and offering, who's in the DMU? And I apologize for the abbreviations. For those who don't know, the DMU is the decision-making unit. So it's the people, it's the individuals, or the types of individuals that are in the team that makes decisions for your type of offering in your ideal client profile company now, or your ideal client profile organization, I should say. Now, so this means that this is for any business. This is just absolutely fundamental. You need to create an ideal client profile, and you need to define who your buyers are, the decision-making unit. If you don't, then there's no way that you can bring them awareness and help them educate themselves, because A, you don't know what kind of company is particularly successful using your solution, and B, you don't know who is going to making decisions, and you don't know, literally no solutions are being sold right now with just a single individual making the decision. Almost everything is going through consensus with a team of people either at mid-level management, senior management level, or even board level. And so it is incredibly important to get those people aligned so that they can make a decision together on how your solution can help their company further and solve the problems that each individual thinks is important. As you can imagine, that consensus, the marketing thinks in a different direction as sales. So these, and so does finance. And so getting alignment is a is a topic for an entire another podcast or three. But that is something that that you need to think about how you get. So once you've mapped that journey of finding the DMU, setting your ideal client profile, finding out what brings awareness and help people educate themselves and go through the selection, you need to map your sales process to that journey and figure out which specific steps and which specific actions you need to take in order to bring awareness, educate, aid with the selection and gain commitment. And at this point in time, we're not even talking about sales tools yet. We're just talking about what are the things you need to do. All right, so we need to talk to them. Does that happen face-to-face? And does it happen over a virtual means of communication? Like, does it happen over a call or does it happen over video? And only in the next stage where we talk about tools, we start talking about which specific tools we need to use to meet with people. We need to do the same thing with education. Do we do presentations? Do we send out collateral? Do we bring people into to seminars? Do we do webinars and so on and so forth? Do we write content? And the same goes for selection. What are the things that are important to clients? How do we help them define their criteria? How do we help them figure out how we fit with their criteria? And finally, the gaining commitment moment. How do we get signatures? What do our contracts look like? And all that kind of stuff. That is all stuff that you need to think about when you map your process. And then when we move on to mapping the tools is where we say, all right, so we need to figure out how to gain, how to bring awareness. So when we create content for our websites, how exactly is it that we create content? What are the tools that we create and that we use to create and distribute content? Do we blog, and which tools do we use for that? How do we do email newsletters? Do we use MailChimp for newsletters, for instance? Which tools can we use to automate so that we don't need to copy data from one tool to the other every single time we jump from tool to tool? And what are the things that we need to do manually? I had a conversation with a gentleman just last week about the pros and cons of doing automatic scheduling, for instance, and where I'm a huge fan of automatic scheduling. I do it all the time. I've been booking nearly 2,000 meetings just using automatic scheduling. So that's 2,000 times that I didn't have to go, when do you have time? When do I have time? No, I don't have time at that time. Do you have time at this time? And so on and so forth. So I can do without having done that for 2,000 times. So, but what his point was, yeah, but in my industry, we use that back and forth to figure out how difficult the customer is to deal with. We figure out how we can allocate resources and how tough it is to allocate resources together with this client. And so in some industries, you need to make smart decisions on where to automate and where not to automate, where instead specifically to go manual, because that's what fits with your industry and your kinds of clients. All right, that's our pre-sales process. So we'll rock on to the post-sales process or the customer success process. And so what we have here is exactly the same sort of logic. We make sure that we hand off and that we onboard, so that we provide the client with exactly the experience that they want, an experience of us being successful at solving the problem that they engage with us to solve. And so that they want to go and do repeat business. Again, we map the process out. Also the post-sales process, we need to map it out also from a workflow perspective to do handoffs, specify what we do to do onboarding. How do we do onboarding? Do we need to travel out and do implementation, or do we need to just send out a bunch of videos in an automated email sequence? We need to figure out what we measure and what we use to figure out whether we're actually productive for that specific client. What are some of the KPIs, the key performance indicators that they use to measure whether we are doing all right. And finally, what do we do specifically to aid in the expansion and the renewal? And again, here, it's also again about mapping which tools are available to do the things that are at hand, the tasks at hand that we need to take care of in the process. Implement them, preferably in an automated fashion, but where it's appropriate, we will go manual. So I'm rushing a little bit through the customer sales process, but because I'm sure you get the concept of we need to go first, we need to go customer journey, map the process, find the tools. Then we do implementation. And so that's pretty much in the order of things. Now, what we've done is we've tried to just do, just for example, we wanted to give you an example of how you could use Leadfeeder. We've been getting a lot of questions about how Leadfeeder can be used and be an active part of the sales process. How do we make sure that salespeople don't have to go over to Leadfeeder to do part of their job? I mean, after all, every single time a sales professional needs to jump from any tool to any other tool is time lost. So what you want to do is you want to make it possible to just sit in one single tool and do all your business from there. And so that's what we've been trying to do with this here. So what we have for you is a Leadfeeder process where you see that people are coming in through the website, and we check then whether they are a recurring visitor, whether they're not a recurring visitor. If totally, Lana, you'll get a copy. And so when they are a recurring visitor, we'll push them into a particular separate process for recurring visitors. You could imagine that this could be done also, by the way, not just for recurring visitors, but you could also set up filters using Leadfeeder, where customers are channeled, but for instance, existing customers are channeled into a particular direction, and they're put over in a direction of the current accounts team, the account management team, for expansion. And you could also, what we've done here is that we've seen, so if they're not a recurring visitor, or if they're not a current client, then they need to go in direction of the team that handles new visits or new accounts, just handles new business. This could be a sales development rep team, or it could just be a team of people who do new biz.
Yeah. Just to add context to this for Jakob, what he's talking about are very different, very specific use cases, and that's also where the tool really comes in. So you can really build, and in the Leadfeeder context, the custom feeds in this particular flowchart. I would really recommend start thinking flowcharts. Take a whiteboard and draw it all out. But what he's talking about is basically in your head the checklist that you go through. Translate that to a custom feed, as we call them in Leadfeeder. Build something that fits that. Have that and have that particular information be delivered to the right person at the right time. So relevancy is always 100%, and that's where automation and integration come in. Back to you, Jakob.
And with Leadfeeder, you can set up all sorts of context. I mean, you can base it on where people are coming from, and you can base it on the pages that they've been viewing. You can base it on, well, you can basically take any of the data that's available to us and build your context and channel those visits in direction of the team that's most appropriately trained to handle that context. So that's super strong. And we'll go through, and this entire process isn't just a Leadfeeder process, because of course we all work with all sorts of different tools. We can work with in some of the ones that come up in conversation when we talk about Leadfeeder integrating with something are CRM tools in particular, and outreach tools in particular. And so what we can do with either some of the great direct integrations that Leadfeeder has done to the likes of Pipedrive, is then we can just integrate all the data directly, but we can also integrate with the Leadfeeder Zapier integration, and basically zap the information over to, well, literally any other CRM system. It's not literally any other CRM system, because there are a few that don't. But then, there's at this point in time there's 700 and counting apps in Zapier's App Store, off of my last count. So your creativity in terms of where you put this data is really where the limits lie. And so, but what we've done here is we sap all of this information, or we integrate all of this information over into your CRM system. We create a task for the team or for the individual that's most important, most appropriate to follow up. Then the red squares, the red boxes here in this here particular process, they are where we do something that's manual. And so in this particular case, sales researches the prospect on LinkedIn, figures out whether this is still actually an organization that fits our ideal client profile. If it is, we continue. If it's not, we abandon. And if it's and then we start checking whether this is someone that we have a first-degree connection with, either individually or somewhere in the organization. That depends a little bit on your. I'd recommend using LinkedIn Sales Navigator for this, and whether you can check whether it's yourself who has a first-degree connection or your team that has a first-degree connection. Obviously, depends very much on the kind of Sales Navigator subscription that you have. So then what you do, if it's a first-degree connection, you take one particular trail and you just reach out to them. But if it's not, then you take a different trail and you start following up with a CXO or a VP or whichever kind of decision maker that is right for you. Or actually, you could start from the bottom of the organization. Depends a little bit on your sales methodology and your
service,
and your sales process. Yeah, exactly. No, precisely. Yeah, exactly. So,
and that's also where Leadfeeder can also help you a little. I mean, of course, I have to tout our own horn a little bit, and I mean, because all of this, what Jakob is talking through, it's the process in your entire tool stack, of course. So it's not just talking about like how awesome we are. I mean, this is really helping you to think about, okay, so how do I drive the right and relevant leads through the process to ensure that they end up in front of the right person who can actually do something with it, and who then who are empowered with the right tools and the right insights to be able to act upon that. And that's really where it gets interesting. That's why LinkedIn is so powerful. That's why we are now also integrating with LinkedIn Sales Navigator. But on a more specific level, depending on what kind of product or service you offer, you will have an idea of what the kind of buyer you have. You know, any salesperson worth their salt will have that idea. So when they start looking at the visit behavior, and then whether it's recurring or new, when you see the way people go through your website and you have that delivered, you get the context of the client within Leadfeeder, of the company, sorry. You will start getting an idea, okay, well, this is probably the marketing manager you need to speak to, it's the HR manager, it's the operation manager. It's, you know, again, all of these things, you probably have a pretty decent idea of where your initial entrance should be. So maybe not blanket in-mail everyone, but, you know, be very targeted. And there's a lot of possibilities. So for example, another thing you can do with Zapier is build the whole loop where you have boiled it down from, let's say, 5,000 identified leads in Leadfeeder all the way down to 5 or 10 that, you know, these are the ones. They tick all the boxes. So what you could, through Zapier, bring it over to Google Sheets, for example, is as simple as that. And from there, use that list of companies, enter it into for LinkedIn sponsored post, and suddenly you are doing, it's small, it's basic ABM, but suddenly you are actually targeting the companies that tick all your boxes, and you're providing them with some very conversion-based content. So suddenly a lot of people in those particular companies are being made aware of your product, your services, your company, and suddenly you have that loop running. So basically, it helps you optimize not just on your sales process, but also improving on your ad spend. So it's really, you know, there are a lot of different levels in this. Sorry, I digress.
No, but I think the most important part is really that this is what fuels your salespeople, right? Your sales, at the end of the day, the sales professionals that are out there getting the work done is the most expensive resource for most organizations, right? And so if you can just increase the sales output by 10%, that is a massive win. Even just a few single-digit percentages increase in sales productivity would be amazing to most organizations, right? And that's something that you can, if you think through that all the different ways that you can use Leadfeeder and other sales technology to automate and to enrich your data and to help your clients through their buying journey, you will win more, and you will win more frequently. Now, there was one thing that I think we need to mention, because I bet that a bunch of you guys have MailChimp lists. Leadfeeder has a feature that is a little unique in the website tracking space, which is that with the Leadfeeder booster, right, Peter?
Yeah.
You can get information about who specifically from your MailChimp lists have been onto your website, checking out the content that you've been sharing in your MailChimp lists.
In a very short term, it's basically a triangle between MailChimp, Leadfeeder, and Leadfeeder Booster. So we would actually see somebody who clicked on something in your MailChimp lists. They would enter your website, but then afterwards we would keep tracking them to keep an eye out. Hey, did they come back? And then of course you would learn also if they are actually involved in any decision-making process, just research process, and all that stuff. It's wonderful. It's a very simple thing. I will share my email at the end of this. So if you want to talk more on that, then by all means reach out and we have a look at it. And I see there are spam bots here. I hope not, but I understand your point. There's of course some filtering to do, but that also is all about the right setup. So there's definitely but that's the joy of of all these tool stacks. Unfortunately, that is an issue.
And working through the workflow is essential, right? That you did.
Exactly.
I think Peter mentioned it as well. That working with a workflow like this here, where you specifically go through the specific actions that you need to take throughout your entire sales process, ensures a couple of things. It ensures that you map out what needs to get done and by who about what, but it also ensures that you don't have places in your sales process where you have holes, where nothing happens, right? Where a customer gets lost, or where you'll be able to define exactly what happens in every single case. If you have these if you make these forks in your sales process, where you go, if this, then that, or else that, then you very quickly see that you're missing some or else's, and that you need to define some more to be happening with and for your clients. So I think that's what I want to say about the sales flow. It's something that you can integrate. You can use it. You can use this using just all sorts of workflow mapping tools, and of course also knowledge of what you can integrate Leadfeeder with, and which other tech tools integrate with each other is pretty handy. But that's something that both the guys at Leadfeeder and that I as well can help you with. So before we dive into questions, I think here's some of the key takeaways from what we've just been talking about. Is particularly you gotta have a process. So because if you don't, then you're just buying tools that you've no idea what you're going to be using. Whether if you have those kinds of tools right now, having a little bit of a review on what kind of tools are you really using, where do they overlap, and can you maybe do without some of them, is interesting. Which ones are going to be critical to your sales process is also super important. So how do you see when people are coming onto your site? How do you create and make a what's it called, content? Basically take these slides that we had about the pre-sales process and the post-sales, the customer success process, and going through the motions of figuring out how you provide your customer with exactly the buyer's journey that they're looking for. I think that's super important. The ideal client profile is critical, of course, because if you don't know who you're selling to, and if you don't know who has particular benefit from working with you, it becomes a little difficult to find out what the buyer's journey looks like. It becomes a little bit difficult to tell your story in an authentic, insightful way, because if you don't know who's being helped, then what is it really we're doing it for? It becomes much easier to target your information once you know who you're talking to. Then finally, the automation and integration. it's just absolutely critical to avoid to force sales professionals and anyone else in the organization to just jump manually from tool to tool. You need to
Exactly.
find automated ways of just sharing data throughout the organization wherever relevant, and providing as much context as possible.
Exactly, and I mean, and it goes for ourselves as well. I mean, when we review tools, one of the not just about what benefits does it bring us, you know, in my daily life, as in, you know, for my particular CS team, but also we look at how does it integrate, you know, because, you know, we're lazy beings by nature. We don't want to be jumping around. We don't have time to have 17 different tools open where there's like a little piece of the information that I need at any given time. It's never perfect, but there's a goal there. You know, you need to go to a place where things are connected, or that the information flows through connected. In a few weeks, we'll officially release automations within Leadfeeder. Some of you might have access to it already. We're doing a little under the radar opening up, but there are some really cool things going to happen there that is actually going to help you with this. So basically, automatically triggering, making sure that things come from one place to the next, and that's going to be epically powerful. I'm sure a lot of you inbound marketeers will be very happy with that, and a lot of salespeople will be happy with that, because they can just stay in their CRM and they will just get their information coming in. And like it says, no use if any one person needs to do more work than before having that particular tool. Whether it
That
goes
just
to
kills
Leadfeeder
productivity.
or
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. And then
And
finally,
then,
of course, do LinkedIn research. That's just that LinkedIn is increasingly the go-to tool for all sorts of information about anybody, really. And it's the part of the important one of the important points of using LinkedIn for those of you in Europe is that when you're in LinkedIn and you're doing your research there, everything is all your traditional GDPR concerns are governed by the LinkedIn user agreement. So LinkedIn is absolutely the place to go to look up data that you can use to expand your prospecting. And so go there. I would even go and say to most organizations, absolutely the Sales Navigator subscription is a minimum, because you can do things with it that you just cannot do with any premium account. So absolutely worth it.
worth checking out.
Yeah, totally.
Jakob, there's a question. What's the better or effective customer journey charting tool?
I think it's really what works for you. I use Lucidchart for charting all the different kinds of workflows. But there are a bunch of tools out there that can do it. I think.
I mean,
I
I've
think
seen
one of the
people do it
things you
in
want to
Google
do is
Slides.
you want to.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, we're talking. I've seen people do it in Google Slides. You know, I mean, there's all
Yeah.
kinds of ways, but there are definitely more specific tools that are available, I'm sure.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, what you use the charting tool for is just to map out something that you have found out somewhere else. I think it's critical for you to have to gain that kind of insight from your clients, from conversations with your clients about what is it that they are looking for, what are the problems that they experience, what are the solutions they're looking for, how do they want to take that decision, and who is part of making it. Just really gaining that insight into how your clients act and who inside your client organizations act to potentially select you as their next vendor. I think that is the critical part, and making sure that you ask those questions when out trying to help them make better decisions. I think that's the critical part. It's almost as if sales training and good sales coaching on making sure that you ask these questions is critical.
Excellent. And I see even a comment here from one of our attendees. He says, I use Trello to build market funnels. Why not?
Yeah, totally. But
Exactly.
again, I mean, yeah. But look, it's with this as with anything else, right? It's we start out with figuring out what it is we really need to get done, and then we find some tool that can do it. I think the figuring out and limiting what exactly we want to get done, and then just finding tools that we can plug into our process and make it work. I think that's totally what works, and whatever works for you, right? So Trello is totally one of those tools that can help.
Yeah, we use Trello for a lot of things as well in just within our team. So another question, Jakob, given your wide experience in sales, once the research is done, what technique have you found most useful to convert the lead? Cold calling or email?
It really depends on industry and the type of people that you're so actually there's a whole bunch of things it depends on, because in different parts of the world you'll have outbound calling working more or less well. In some parts of the world you'll find that it doesn't work at all, and in other parts of the world you'll find that you sail through the reception. You just get exactly to who you want. There's specific technology as well that you can use to get exactly the individual on the phone that you want to speak to. That technology typically is in English only, so it's questionable whether you want to use it in a country where you don't have second language English or non-native English being really strong. And so, but these are considerations that you want to. Oh, and by the way, the GDPR concerns in Europe, of course, and there are can spam sort of concerns in North America. And so you want to make sure that you take these things into consideration. I don't think that you should sit on just one of these ways of doing your outbound. You, at minimum, you want to build yourself a sequence that blends different kinds of prospecting. And the different kinds of prospecting that I would blend are outbound calling, email, and LinkedIn. And depending on where we are in the world and how I might have obtained the data, and how much scale I want to give my outbound, I may select not to do email. But outbound calling and LinkedIn is totally good everywhere.
All right. Let's move on then. I see a lot of good questions.
Let me see, what else do we have? Oh, someone's, Darshan, you had a question about how to deal with churned customers. So churned customers is customers that didn't want to be customers anymore, right? The best thing you can do to churn customers, make sure they don't churn in the first place. It's pretty tough to bring back someone who has now gone somewhere, who's taken their business somewhere else. What I'd do instead is I'd make sure that I have churn preventing workflows in place to make sure that that they don't churn in the first place. That means reaching out to them on a regular basis. It means making sure that when their credit card payment fails, then we reach out to them. It also means making sure that we measure whether we have a product market fit, because there's a lot of software that is just looking for the exactly correct product market fit, and just having a high churn could be a sign that you just don't have product market fit. You know, in many SaaS companies, what we see is that there's a huge influx of leads at the top end of the funnel, and then when it comes down to renewal, you just see really high churn, and it is not necessarily just a sign that these people didn't get it. It could also well be a sign that the company's offerings just isn't yet delivering the kind of value that the market expects.
And to add to that, I mean, that's of course my corner of the business. I would say it comes back to the sales process as well. I mean, the seeds for retention are planted the moment they come on your website already, and it's the whole organization that's included. Because for me, and just in general, the rule number one is get the right clients in. Do you get the right clients in? You'll get more value. They'll stay longer, etc., etc. It's a whole snowball effect. So what to do about churn customers? There's of course a lot of things you can do after the fact, but I would say the main thing is going back to exactly what we just talked about here in the last 30-40 minutes is optimizing your sales process, making sure that you get the right clients in to begin with. Even just if they stay for a couple months longer or for 1 year longer, rather than maybe the 5 years you hoped for, or shorter periods, of course, already will help you in your numbers there.
And continue to try to deliver value from a marketing perspective, right? Because if you still have content that's relevant for these people, continue to crank that out. Keep them in your email list. Try to keep on developing the network. Sooner or later, you've no idea whether you're going to have something at a later stage that might fit the organization that churned, and you have no idea whether their situation is going to change, so that your current offering might be just right for them. And so as long as you try to deliver value and help them solve their problems, you can remain someone that they will go to for help.
All right. Another question: does InMail work well versus email or calling in via office mainline from LinkedIn, lead identified from Leadfeeder? I would say yes, especially in our business. People are using LinkedIn actively. People read, people interact. I mean, LinkedIn is the place to do business. It is aimed at B2B. I have a few business contacts randomly on Facebook as well, but I definitely wouldn't use that for more than a casual conversation. But I would say yes, InMail definitely works well. And there's a reason why. That's part of also the offering of LinkedIn. It gets delivered, it's personal, and you can target it extremely well. So where email is a little bit more scattered approach in that sense.
I'm going to introduce an alternative. Because I think that while InMail does work, there are a couple of problems with InMail. That on LinkedIn, what people are on LinkedIn to network and to gain and to share insights, to get smarter and to do better business. And so InMails are highly that they're commercial approaches. It's either recruiters or salespeople that use or people who try to sell you something that are using InMail. So you're being sold to once you receive an InMail. So some people don't like being sold to, and so if your clients are among the ones that don't like being sold to, maybe you want to take a different approach. The other part about InMail is you have a very limited amount of InMails on a monthly basis. I think off the top of my head, it's 25-ish or maybe 30 on the regular Sales Navigator. And for the average sales development rep or account executive or account manager, that is just not going to cut it on a monthly basis. So what I would do instead is I would try to use softly worded LinkedIn invitations to connect with people, also people that you do not know, in order to do a couple of things: grow your network, start building relationships on a permanent basis. See, when you connect with someone when you send out an email, you don't connect with these people at all, and so you don't retain that relationship. There are plenty of people that are not in the market to buy whatever it is you're selling right now, but may be in the market of buying it later on, and who may be willing to connect with you simply because you announced that I'm an industry insider. I know everything about how our industry works, and it looks like you know everything as well. So why don't we just combine our thinking, and both of us get super smart? And so those kinds of mutually beneficial non-pitches tend to work really well on LinkedIn. And actually, recently, I'm not sure whether this is recently LinkedIn changed their user agreement from you are not allowed to send out invitations to people you don't know to nothing, no guidance at all.
Plus, you can't actually extract emails from there anymore, but that's another part. But yeah, and also another one is follow. That's also one we always recommend, and it actually was a part of the whole flowchart earlier. It's also like keeping track of what people in companies that are fitting your profile, ideal customer profile. What are they doing? What are they thinking about? What are they struggling with? I use LinkedIn for a lot of things, for questions, for communication, and networking. So there's definitely a lot of things coming in. But yeah, I also get the a lot of the things that you talk about well, we're almost people selling something. That's just how it is.
Yeah,
part of
totally.
doing business. Last question, and then we are closing for today. Alex is asking, what are your solutions when the DMU or the reference person doesn't have LinkedIn? I'm sneakily suspecting Germany, potentially. Xing.
Hit them up on Sing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, look, Alex, you want to try to. That's why you want to blend your approach, because you got to find people where they are, and if that means calling them or sending out an invitation, or calling them or sending out an email, that's just where you want to go. Yeah. You're in Germany, huh? Yeah. All right, cool. So that's what you want to do. And if they're in the neighborhood, you may want to come by. You may want to you may want to combine some of your potential field trips with a surprise visit to an organization that you have on your target list, or you just want to connect with someone else in the organization. Find out who else is on LinkedIn from that particular organization. Connect with them, try a different route. At the end of it, you gotta talk with different people anyway, because it's whatever it is that you're selling, you're likely to experience that your sale is a consensus sale, and that more people will be required to make a decision about the solutions that you're selling, and so you gotta speak to those people anyway. So you might as well get at it.
Wise words to close off with. All right, 52 minutes in. I think we covered a lot of things. It's wonderful to see so many questions, so many things coming in. I hope this was useful for you. As you see there, if you have any questions specifically about Leadfeeder, I'm happy to either help you myself or direct you to whoever from my team can help you. If you want to talk even more sales process, that Jakob has a nice link there. You'll get the recording, you get the slides, and well, either way, one way or another, talk to you soon, I'm sure.
Let us know. Happy to help. Thanks for your time.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.